This story is about the Scott County Jail, located in Huntsville, Tennessee. This jailhouse is full of dark, dark history. And if you do not want to hear it, you need to scroll it on up because this is your only warning. The jail was built in 1904 and is known as being one of the oldest buildings in Scott County. The jail was built out of sandstone that was local, and the walls on that thing is about roughly 5 foot wide. Now, this jailhouse could only hold about 50 inmates, and those inmates that were in there, from the time it opened to the time it closed, was known to be some of the roughest outlaws in Appalachian history. At one point, they even held Ernest Tubbs because he got intoxicated and drunk in public at a concert that he gave for the county. And they said they made Ernest Tubbs sit in the jail cell with a guitar and give the sheriff his own private concert. Now, Scott County was known for its lawlessness. Whenever the sheriff didn't step up and do what he was supposed to do, then a mob of people would come up and take it into their own hands, and they handled business. And these locals had no tolerance whatsoever for thieves or unalivers. Many of these inmates didn't even make it to their court date because these mobs would come in and take the inmate out onto the property or in the street, and they would lynch them. And one of the lynchings that they had was just horrific. They took a man and hung him up from an oak tree. Well, his rope snapped before, the deed was done. So they went out to a nearby fence, a barbed wire fence, and they cut the barbed wire fence off. And they took that strand of barbed wire and they hung him up from that. That's not even the worst thing that happened there. In 1925, there was a preacher turned lawman that had a vendetta against some moonshiners. This man's name was R.D. Ellis, and this was during Prohibition. Well, he had happened to fill up most of the dang jailhouse with moonshiners. And while he was bringing back 2 moonshiners that he had caught on by their steel, and he took them in there and was headed towards the door, when all of a sudden 2 masked men arrived, and they pewed him. They put 3 right in his noggin, dropped him like a cold sack of potatoes. And this crime that happened right here at this doorstep has never been solved. Another story took place in 1933 when this moonshiner, who was also known not to take nothing off nobody but was very good-hearted, named Jerome Boyette, got himself into a little predicament. Jerome and his uncle got into a knockout, drag-out fight one day that left his uncle pretty hurt. It hurt enough for them to call the sheriff. The sheriff and his son tracked down Jerome and his brother and 2 other men in a boxcar on the train tracks. Well, the sheriff's son decided that he was going to ride off into the air, and that scared the mess out of Jerome's little brother, and Jerome's little brother screamed. Jerome thought his brother had been hit, and that's when he, returned fire. He'd put 2 rounds in the old sheriff's son's noggin, too. And then he put 2 of them in the sheriff's stomach. And the sheriff passed away later on in the hospital. And Jerome took off to take shelter in the mountains, because that's one place that he knew like the back of his hand. Now, another mob gathered, and they took Jerome's whole entire family, and they locked them away in another jailhouse. They were hoping that would coax Jerome out of the mountains, but it didn't. So they sent Jerome's father out to go find him, trying to bring him into the jailhouse, for what he'd done. Well, things got really bad after that. See, the next day when they had let Jerome's daddy out, Jerome's daddy was found at his house with his neck snapped, unalived, in a chair. Well, once Jerome found out what happened to his daddy, he surely came out of the woods and the mountains, and he did turn himself in. But before his court date could even happen, a mob of about 25 masked men came in and took over the jail, knocked the security guys out, while the sheriff was conveniently out of town. 2 of those men took their hoods off, and they made it to the story that Jerome and another man named Harvey Winchester were on. Told Jerome and Harvey that, hey man, it's not safe here for y'all, so we're going to get you out of here. We're going to take you to another jail place because there's a big mob coming for you, and we just got to get you out of here. So they handcuffed the 2 men together, and when they let them out of the jail cell, there Jerome and Harvey saw them, the mob of hooded men, and they just realized that they were lied to. They put that rope around old Harvey's neck, and they drug him out into the street. Then they had him run circles round and round, like they were lunging a horse, And then the onlookers had their you-know-whats, and they were firing at him. And then they did that till he was unalived on the ground. He was no more. And Jerome got the worst of it. Jerome was stripped down to his bare skivvies to nothing. And they forced him to run down the road begging for his life as the same spectators and mob men took him out and started firing down the street at him. And he took 7 of the fires before he collapsed to the ground. And to this day, nobody has ever identified any person that was in that mob. At one point in this jail, there was a sheriff that was doing some dirty work for old Pablo Escobar, smuggling some stuff. With all these dark and horrible things that happen to these people, there is absolutely paranormal activity that happens here. There's a 7-foot shadow man that has been seen all over this facility. He's been observed by paranormal investigators and inmates, as well as old employees that were there on multiple occasions. He's even been caught on one of the jail's live streams. There are disembodied voices that have been captured in here, and there's a lot of poltergeist activity. It said that a detective was sitting at her desk one day. She was doing her work when all of a sudden, all the things on her desk were shoved across them and landed all on the floor. Pictures are known to fly off the walls or get thrown across the room. The elevator is a hot spot. It's known to move on its own, the doors to open and shut by themselves. And even a detective got the scare of her life when she was in the elevator going up to the 3rd floor and a man coughed in her ear. But she was the only person on the elevator. Doors have been said to open and shut and slam loudly all over the building. Different deputies that have worked there through the years have said that footsteps would be heard on the back stairs so much that sometimes they thought that inmates were breaking out. A jailer on the 3rd floor said that he was doing his rounds when he got ran off by a shadow man. The Scotts County Jail opened in 2021 as a true crime museum as well as a paranormal research facility. They offer history tours as well as paranormal investigations. With all the inmates just trying to get out, would you spend the night there? Let me know in the comments. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and y'all don't forget to follow me for more paranormal stories.